Hey, and welcome back. J.P.'s World of Wrestling. I am your man J.P., and today we continue on with the Mattel Retros. And today we are profiling, personally, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I know most of you probably don't share that opinion, and that's okay. But uh, I'm going to talk about him anyway. So today we're talking about this guy right here. This is Chris Jericho, also known as Y2J, Le Champion, whatever, the Lionheart, whatever you want to call him. But this is the Chris Jericho Mattel Retro figure. Like I said, I've been a big fan of this guy for a long time. And I've been following him since his time in WCW. When he came into WCW, I know before that, though, he was in ECW for a while. And I know he was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling for a while. But when he got to WCW, they turned him into the Lionheart Chris Jericho, and he was a babyface, and he came in, and I just thought he was cool. He had this long blonde, like rocker hair, and he would do like these really cool, like high-flying moves in the ring, but they were high-flying moves that made sense. One of the main issues I have with, like, for example, the Lucha Libre style wrestling is a lot of the moves don't make any sense, and it's not moves that you would ever actually do. Like, no actual person while fighting would ever do those moves. But Jericho's moves actually made sense. Like, he would spring the second rope and do a drop kick or whatever. They made sense. And so Jericho, even though he was never the biggest guy in the company, he made it work for himself. And so, as good as he was as a babyface, WCW decided to turn him heel, which he got excited about because finally he was going to be able to have some personality. So then he turned heel, and he started doing. That's when I really became a fan, because he started doing things, saying things that were just funny, just out there, just you know, nobody else was doing what he was doing. And I remember one segment where it was during a time when he was kind of feuding with Dean Malenko, and Dean Malenko calls himself the Man of 1,000 Holds. So then Chris Jericho turned around and called himself the Man of 1,004 Holds. And so this one time, after a match with Marty Jannetty, the match was relatively quick, and so he had time to kill. So he had this big stack of, like, a computer printout listing of all the holds that he knew. So he had this paper, like he let it down, and he was kind of reading, and he was reading off all the holds that he knew. He was like, number 1, arm drag. Number 2, right-handed punch. Number 3, left-handed punch. Number 4, arm drag. And just ridiculous. And then, like, some of the stuff he would say was kind of out there. Like, he was feuding with Raven and Raven's flock for a while in WCW. And then he was doing this promo against Raven. And he's like, it just so happens that the flock is the biggest group of idiots and morons. And it just caught me funny. It just struck me funny for whatever reason. And then he would, he had this bodyguard with him. Like, this bodyguard is really like this overweight, goofy guy named Ralphus. He basically just gave him like a regular, like, white shirt, and with a Sharpie said Jericho Personal Security. And he was kind of making fun of the fact that Goldberg would have security follow him to the ring. But Jericho was like, hey, what if I did this thing where I had my own security, but it was this goofy guy. So he knew this guy that kind of looked kind of goofy that you would never have as a real security guy. And then he would do this thing where he would intentionally like mispronounce names. Like when he was in the WWF and he was feuding with Kurt Angle, he would call him Kirk Angel. Or when he was in the WWF and Howard Finkel would follow him around, he kept calling him Harold. Okay, Harold, now go get my bags. And then Howard Finkel would go, it's Howard. And Jericho, whatever. So, but yeah, so then Jericho started in WCW. Now he started feuding with Goldberg, and he was saying stuff about Goldberg, and then Goldberg didn't really appreciate it, and got mad at him. And so, but Chris Jericho saw the cracks in the pavement in WCW. He saw WCW kind of starting to fall apart. So that's when he signed on with the WWF. Now, when he came to the WWF, I wasn't really watching real heavily. I wasn't really interested in what they were doing. But then when Chris Jericho signed, I'm like, oh, well, suddenly I have a reason to watch. So on his first night in the company, he interrupts a promo, and of all people, he interrupts The Rock. So him and Rock have this exchange of words, but the promo that Jericho did on The Rock, a lot of the stuff he said, he was just saying stuff, but I actually agreed with a lot of what he was saying. So, yeah, I mean, I would go back and try to find that. Maybe it's on YouTube or maybe it's on the network, on Peacock or whatever. I would try to go back and watch that because it was a really good promo. But so then Jericho started making a name for himself in the WWF. In fact, one night on Raw, Chris Jericho actually beat Triple H for the WWF title, which was then like reversed, and then it was like kind of stricken from the record books. Oh, it never happened because Triple H was a heel at the time and he was a champion, and so nobody could ever beat him. Nobody was allowed to win. So then Jericho started feuding with Triple H, including exchanging words with Stephanie McMahon. And then Jericho went on to win the Intercontinental title more times than anybody in history. So, and then he eventually became the first ever undisputed heavyweight champion, which was like the WCW title and the WWF title combined into one title. It was two belts, but they eventually turned it into one belt. But there was Night of Champions where that night Chris Jericho beat The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin on the same night. Sure, it was tainted, but a lot of matches are tainted. It doesn't matter. The fact is Jericho has that claim to fame. But eventually, oh man, he did so many things in the WWF. Then he left for a while, toured with his band Fozzy, which I've actually seen live. I went to see Fozzy live, and they were really good. It was a really fun night, good concert. So then Jericho came back, and he immediately started feuding with guys like J.P.s and Shawn Michaels. And, he had a really good, solid second run. But finally, he started doing this gimmick where he would come down to the ring in a suit, and he would start telling people, I'm the best in the world at what I do. And, he had this like really strong feud with Shawn Michaels. That was a really good feud that culminated in a ladder match for the World Heavyweight title. And I was actually there, that event. That was for No Mercy 2008. And I was in the audience for that event. And it was a good match. And that was actually one of Chris Jericho's favorite matches of all time. So yeah. So then Jericho left the WWE because he really didn't feel like the WWE was really using him in any strong capacity. So he's like, okay, if you're not going to use me, then I'm just going to go elsewhere. So he left. Then he signed on with AEW, and he's still there. Now, I'm not a big fan of AEW, but I am still a fan of Chris Jericho. I'm not maybe so much a fan of the stuff he's doing in AEW, but that's not really his fault. That's just, I'm not a fan of the company. But they do have Jericho, they do have Sting over there, so I guess it's not all bad. But nevertheless, Chris Jericho, one of my favorites of all time. And this is a good figure. Of the Hasbro or the Mattel Retros, this figure style is probably my favorite of the ones that they've released because it's perfect. It's like the perfect pose for doing anything, really. But I think it's just that. It's the same basic body style as AJ Styles. But yeah, I love, love, love this figure. And that is going to do it for this video. If you're new here, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.